All right, is everyone's ready? Woo-hoo. Hi guys, welcome. A few new faces. Very happy to have these lovely people up here. I just wanted to introduce myself and them before we get started. My name's Weinberg. I work with Vaughn as the creative marketing manager, and my role and expertise is really the creative strategy and graphic design. While it's not your traditional storytelling, there's always an element of telling a story through visuals and graphics, and so I'm going to try and use that knowledge to talk with these folks. So our core concept for the panel today is about storytelling, the process, how to achieve goals through storytelling for your brand, for a company, and reach an audience through media and content and entertainment. So this is Derek Riedle, Derek Riedle, CEO and founder of Civilized. So he can talk, about his experience in the publishing world. He's in a disruptive market, cannabis and lifestyle brand, and he'll have a lot of stories to share. So Yael Swerdlow, CEO and founder of Maestro. So she, bringing technology into the mainstream and, revolutionizing the healthcare industry and other industries with music therapy. And then we have Prince Vaughn from Unrealistic Ideas. Prince.
It's actually Prince Vaughn the Third, isn't it?
Prince Vaughn the Third. William Prince Vaughn the Third, the best name out there, and he can share some information about casting and development of motion pictures and TV series from that standpoint for Unrealistic Ideas. And then we have Damian Slattery from Fast Company, VP of Marketing, and he will be able to share his perspective from the publishing world as well, but in a different manner, bringing stories to people and working with brands to tell those stories and make an impact. So, to start, I wanted to talk actually about, measuring results and success of traditional storytelling, and I wanted to get into short form, long form, unscripted versus scripted. How can you actually measure the achieved results and success of a campaign, of a film? I'll have Derek start with that one.
Sure. For us, it's always about growth. I work I'm the founder of Civilized. Civilized is a media company that really looks to elevate the cannabis space. We're for motivated, productive people who choose to enjoy cannabis as a healthy part of a balanced lifestyle, but we just don't define ourselves by it. I don't have any problem with stoner culture, not at all. I like stoner culture. I was actually a stoner at one point when I was in college, but I outgrew it and went away and got into the work world and left cannabis behind. And then in my mid-30s, when hangovers became two-day affairs, I went back to cannabis. So we're really just trying to change the tone. I forget what the question was already.
Yes, we were talking about cannabis. So the question is, how can you measure the results and success of a film, a TV series, a media campaign,
Yep.
and how can you use that to inform decisions and plans for distribution, everything? That's the concept.
Well, everything we do is digital. So we're constantly into the analytics and trying to optimize everything we're doing daily and learn from what we're doing daily to be smarter the next day. And we're 4 years into this, but we're just at a tipping point where we're really starting to we're really growing. So we're developing new forms of media all the time. We're really investing in YouTube right now. So we're constantly measuring what's working, what's not working, and then we're just doing more of it. It's not as scientific as everybody wants, but we're just so new that when we find, we'll try something. We try a series in YouTube. If it gets a little bit, we chase it. So we're just chasing things that work, and we're in an industry where there is just so little to learn from. If you're in cannabis media, you're penalized by Facebook, you're penalized by Google, you can't buy AdWords. You've got all of these things, and it's not like there's a ton of cannabis publishers out there who have done this before that we can learn from. So we're making it up as we go along and literally just looking at stuff in real time and saying, oh, work, do more.
Yeah, don't break it if it's not broken in a situation. Right. Yeah.
I think for us we're a little bit different. So we're using virtual reality and music and gamifying it to give people moments of beauty and joy and love to create emotional resilience against life's issues. And so our primary market right now are first responders. So we're working with veterans, active duty, nurses, doctors, police, fire, journalists, of what I used to be and still am because I'm a recovering journalist that never recovers. But so we're in that space. For us though, I think the way to measure success, if you will, is, and I hate putting a damper on it, but given the epidemic that we're addressing and given the population that we're starting with, I'm more about like, whose life did I save? How many folks was I able to affect where they feel a little bit more peace and they have a little bit more emotional resiliency inside to withstand something that happened. So we're very focused though on quantitative data and qualitative data. So we're measuring both. So we have a device that's going to measure your heart rate, your oxygenation, your blood pressure, all that stuff. But at the same time, we also have qualitative data. It's like, are you sleeping better? Are you less stressed? Do you feel a little bit lighter today? It was interesting. One of the researchers that we demoed last year at the VR and Healthcare Symposium at Harvard Medical School, and one of the researchers was there. And she demos and she says, "Oh my God, my frontal lobe feels so much lighter now." And so I'm like, God, can I make that a tweet? I don't know. But it was a tweet. Yeah, it's a tweet. But it has intelligence to it as a tweet. But that was, I think, for us, what we're really focused on are the individual stories of the people that we're interacting with. And I'm getting more into this later, but with the populations that we're working with, like nurses that are suffering from moral distress and compassion fatigue, or veterans or whatever, there's a difference between the PTSD diagnosis that we're working with and something called moral injury, which is never really discussed. And it's the moral injury which is driving the suicides and driving the despair. And the difference is PTSD is something that has happened to you. Moral injury is the emotional, spiritual result of you feeling that something happened to you or something that you did makes you feel like you're not deserving of being a member of humanity. And that's what's driving the despair and the suicides. And so what we're able to do on a very subtle level is immerse somebody in a beautiful experience, because one of the manifestations of moral injury is you believe you're not deserving of beauty, and you're not deserving of joy. And so we're able to give you moments of beauty and joy that you not only are immersed in, but that you're also creating on a very subtle level that kind of changes your narrative. So that's, I think, hopefully I answered a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, you did. And also, I mean, it brings us to something that we'll talk about after we hear from Damian and Prince, but just how to tell a story that reaches the right audience, what factors go into that. So.
For us, and us being Unrealistic Ideas, a full-service production company in Los Angeles, and I'm the VP of Development Casting, we basically measure our success on ratings. We do television, basically unscripted television docuseries. We like to call them prestigious docs. And we basically turn to the general ratings. If we're getting picked up, if we're getting renewed. We currently we're a new production company. We have one doc in production right now on HBO called Millions. So we're hoping to get possibly other projects picked up. So we're heading right to turn towards the average, if we're getting renewed, if we're getting picked up.
So a couple things. First, Eden, I think back to what you said about yourself and what you do. Design, to me, a logo can tell a story, right? And we have a great new creative director of Fast Company who's created a whole new family of logos for all our franchises and initiatives. And he has opened my eyes to that. but I go back to old ones like I Love New York or different logos that can evoke a whole story in themselves.
Yeah.
So you are a storyteller if design is your field.
I appreciate it.
And then Prince, your name sounds like a pitch to Hallmark in their December holiday movies. Anyway, so I work on the marketing side of Fast Company, and we are the phrase that might communicate what I do to you all is client solutions. So whether it's for Intel, L'Oreal, Gucci, BMW, we're building ideas that leverage our media platform in all its shapes and sizes and forms. The magazine is, of course, a receding one, even though it's our billboard. From a revenue standpoint, that's on the decline, not from a brand standpoint, and not from a readership standpoint necessarily, but from an ad commitment standpoint. So what do we look at? We look at completion rates. In my world, long form is a 2-minute video. Short form is 30 to 45. And I don't know what 15 is. It's a snackable social post. Right? And yet, the social media editor and I had a conversation the other day, and she said to me that 45s on social are getting more and better views than 15s. So you don't know where and how things will evolve. I mean, Instagram stories and things and Snapchat just changed the dynamic for your content and mine and maybe some of yours too. So it's engagement statistics that we focus on for our marketing partners, and whether their ads or the content and the storytelling that we create for them succeeds and creates brand lift and things like a whole host of metrics that we bore people.
Right.
But that's
So-
part of our
Brand
world.
lift.
Yeah.
Metrics, yeah.
Brand lift.
Yeah. Favorability and lift. You know.
Yeah. Well, that is actually a great segue to our next question topic. I wanted to talk about, just like evolving technology and how that has an impact on the way that you plan and create content, tell your stories, how you distribute it, where you distribute it, and the length, the time, all of that. And so the way that social media is evolving, the way that content creation is evolving, and on the technology that goes into that, I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts, how you account for that when you go to the drawing board and start planning a campaign for creating your content.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So,
Go for it.
I think on the development side of television, the streaming has been a huge thing that we are really trying to jump into full force. What was your question again? I'm sorry.
Just how do you factor in and account for the evolving nature of social media, technology, all of this stuff?
Yes, technology being we heavily pitch Netflix and Amazon, Hulu being huge streaming services, and we're really trying to break into that medium, and that's a big part of that's not the traditional stream of television that's been that we've seen. So I think technology plays a huge part in Netflix and Amazon being huge factors that have kind of changed the landscape of technology.
Absolutely. For us, oftentimes the idea itself dictates how you're going to execute it, whether it's length. We do a little series online called Cannabis for Beginners, and it's literally 25-second videos of me just saying, here's what an indicate is, and a few graphics, and that's it. They're just little snackable things because that's all it is. We don't need 45 seconds. And people don't want 2 minutes to find out what that is. It's just it's bite-sized things. So oftentimes it's inherent in what you are trying to achieve. The beauty of it, I find, is when it's inherent in what you want to achieve, but then when you really crack an idea and you go, okay, it may live here, but how are we going to crack it for all of these other media? How are we going to cut it for this one? How perhaps are we going to gang them up to get the most the most bang for the buck in another? So it is everything to what we do because well, nobody sees it. We don't. If we don't pick the right medium for it. So it's inherent in ideation and creation of the story from the get-go.
I would say your question, Eden, if I spent the bulk of my career to date at Time Inc., a company that no longer exists because they didn't ask themselves the question you asked tonight 10 years ago, 20 years ago,
Right.
enough, right? Where should we go? Where should we be doing, and how should we be doing our content? They stayed focused on the legacy thing that made the company great for a very long time and rich, but then they lost sight.
Right.
So fast forward to this past week, a client I won't mention asked us to shoot an unboxing video for them because they didn't have the resources, but they want that. Someone in their marketing side said we need an unboxing video of their product, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to just go shoot an unboxing video.
Right.
Who the hell?
Is
You know,
that
that's.
code for something that I'm just too old to understand?
Unboxing
no,
video.
yeah.
Yes, no, explain.
I'll send you some later.
Yeah. Just opening up a package, like here's my new cell phone, and I open it, and this
It's
is how the
a-
package comes. And
Yes, I'm not a sneakerhead, but I'm a friend of sneakerheads. So I knew what they meant.
You made it directly for YouTube?
As part of their marketing, so we could post it on YouTube. They could.
Right.
It would be a custom thing, so they'd own the rights to it. So
Yeah.
we'd use it in the advertising channels that we would use, but also then they'd have it for their channels.
Yeah.
It's
So
an-
understanding where the challenge for a media company
Right.
is, can you make money from it?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So you should be there, but can you make money from it? We're not on Snap.
Yeah.
We can't figure that one out.
Right.
But we Fast Company was out of podcasts and came back in the last year. Still not. How can Fast Company not be in podcasting?
Right.
It's like it's a medium born for us.
Yes.
And our brand and how we talk and our tone and the rhythm of what we report and say. But why, off the record, we're not making real money from it. There's not real scale yet for us. So those are questions and challenges you deal with
But
every
it's-
day with every new technology that comes along.
Yeah.
It's a buzz-worthy thing where you have to be observing, what's buzzworthy at that moment, and then really dive into understanding it and seeing if it's worth your while. But we'll look to hear from you.
But Snap's a good example because so many brands looked at it early and chased, and then just thought there's no return here. This is
Right.
I can tell you at Time Inc. we spent a year and a half with everyone's focus on tablet, and for us, tablet went nowhere. Nowhere. And Steve Jobs had come in the building. I saw him in the lobby with this thing, and he sold every editor in the building on the future of magazines being on a tablet. And for a year and a half, we were all distracted and said, that's where we go.
Right.
And it took us the wrong path. I love tablets, but for the magazine business, it was anything but a savior, and everyone thought it would be for a good couple of years.
All right. Well, I wanted to talk and hear from you about some challenges that you've experienced. Just in terms of getting your brand's voice heard. We're living in a world where people are easily offended. They're curious to push boundaries, and I just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on how far do you have to push boundaries to gain traction and make a statement and stand out in this world where everyone's a startup and everyone is competing for a little chunk of the space. So, Jared, I'm gonna start.
That's a really good question. Our perspective on this subject matter is such that we didn't really need to be provocative. In fact, what we needed to be was less provocative and more adult about it. And it's almost it's like like our logo. It's black and white. There's a lot of white space around it to just let some of the noise die away. And that's really what we're trying to do about cannabis. There's so much disinformation and legacy stereotypes and stigma to it that just actually talking about it in a less provocative way. We're certainly not clinical. And we're certainly not above making a weed or a pot joke, We have the same sense of humor. Like, I know who Tommy Chong is. Like, look at the T-shirt back there. And Tommy Chong wouldn't be front and center in the pages of Civilized, but we can laugh at his jokes. So to us, I guess, to think about that, maybe the provocative bit of us was that we weren't, taking the easy way out about cannabis, and we were changing the tone just at a time when people started to look for a different tone. For sure.
Great.
I want to offend people.
Yes.
I want to make them uncomfortable. When it comes down to investors that are focused on greed, I want to make them feel guilty as hell. I really do want to. I want to. I wouldn't say be offensive to the point of obviously alienating people, because the idea is to get folks talking about mental health and talking about the issues that are surrounding these epidemics of just depression and all the other things that are going on. But at the end of the day, it's going to take a hell of a lot more than a social media campaign to actually stop veteran suicide. It's going to take a lot more to work with the epidemics of all of these things. And frankly, there also has to be really provocative conversations as the silver tsunami, of which I'm a member, are aging. We need to be able to start talking about the brain health issues as well, so Alzheimer's and dementia. And there's all these challenges. We have to start talking about it rather than get distracted by shiny new objects and stuff. So I really do want to be able to force the conversation in an elegant way, and we're still trying to figure out what that means. But an example of, and you can't just overwhelm people with statistics. You've got to be able to go back to the story. And so we're working with nurses that are suffering from compassion fatigue and moral distress. And so when you read the nurses' blogs, for example, they're really compelling and heartbreaking, but about nurses writing they'd rather work at Costco as a clerk because they simply can't handle being a nurse anymore. And the thing that makes it the common person is everyone knows a nurse, right? So it's relating that story back to a person that everybody can identify with, that everybody knows. If I said doctors are suffering from physician burnout, the number one response you get is, oh, well, screw them, look how much money they make, da 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 da, right? So there's an instant wall that goes up to understanding that physician suicide is a real thing, physician burnout is a real thing. But if I say nurses, immediately there's a level of compassion that comes from the person finding out that people that they know are suffering. And so that's how we structure the narrative in that way. And same thing with veterans. And when I was just at a private equity conference in Chicago, and for healthcare, and there were 800, basically mostly white men, private equity folks in the room, and there may maybe about 100 women, if that. And when I was a presenting company and a feature company, and I had to remind myself, it's not that picture everyone in the room naked so you can get over your fear, but it's picture everyone in that room needing your solution because somewhere they are afflicted, or a family member or some member of their community is afflicted with or challenged by the things that you're addressing. And that made the conversation so much easier to where you can relate to them as humans and not just like a wallet, So it was different.
I mean, pushing boundaries is a very interesting subject in the world that we live in today. So, working for Mark Weinberg, who's the owner of my company, we tend to not push boundaries in a very traditional way. We would like to push boundaries in the diversity that the projects that we do, including women, people like myself, people of color. We try to really stay away from pushing boundaries simply because of the Weinberg brand. We really try to protect, his name, because basically that is the forefront of our company. So yeah, we try to stay away from pushing boundaries in like a traditional sense, but obviously, the company is a very diverse company, and we love to push boundaries in the content that we create, and really not pushing boundaries and getting the Weinberg name into like mainstream.
Right.
You got to sell burgers.
Right?
We do that. We're very conscious of what comes out of our company because of Weinberg, and everything seems to be flipped when you mention a celebrity, in Hollywood. So
instead you can push the boundaries with the content that you're creating,
exactly,
which will have the impact and be able to
exactly.
you don't need to just say things to say them to cause a reaction. I think
Absolutely,
that-
yeah. We don't want to cause any reactions.
Right.
We'd rather-
No reactions.
We want to create, interesting and
Yeah.
compelling content. That's our main factor.
At Fast Company, I'd say we're a media brand dedicated laser-like to the beat of innovation. And that allows us to go beyond traditional boundaries. If we just stay true to that, if we get off that, we don't know where we'll go. But that allows us to explore business models, new business models, new opportunities for our marketing partners, for our brand, and yes, I agree. It appeals to the young. It's amazing. They love innovation. Anyway, next question.
That was great. So my next question, let's start with Damian.
Stop beating up on me.
Yeah, you're gonna take a break here for a second. So I wanted to kind of talk about, we heard a lot about entertainment finance in the, feature film world earlier, but I wanted to just, talk about how you factor budgets into content creation and, for you in the publishing world, how does that factor in to your overall budget, on the marketing standpoint? Is quality versus quantity, where do you stand on quality versus quantity in terms of the content?
Sure, it's got the answers in two parts. So, anybody familiar with media business like I've lived it? You, for years, decades, you created editorial content and companies bought advertising around it. Print, digital, radio, TV, whatever. And so you invested your resources in creating that editorial content. Well, now that is over, right, in almost every medium. Where now you're content creators. Everybody has a content studio. Though I've never seen a content studio head lock himself or herself in a family restroom. Those issues. But
Where's
maybe you know somebody.
It's still early, too.
So that's changed the dynamic. So that ad budget that used to be pure play media, run print ads, run digital ads, run radio ads, whatever it is, now you have to change your business model, your P&L, because you've got to go shoot a video series, create a series of articles, host an experiential activation of some kind. So without getting into the weeds of that, it's certainly changed it, and you've got to come at the work that you do as a media brand marketer in a whole new way. And then, what was the second part of that question?
Quality versus quantity.
Nobody just wants one video or one article, even if that's all their budget calls for. So you have to be creative. You have to find new ways to slice and dice. Social helps because you can do social cuts. You can do posts. You can do reporting for one main piece, but then you can it can have many tentacles. So you have to get creative in that way. The quality has to exist, right. But whether the budget allows for quantity, you have to find new ways. And tech and social and other things allow for quantity to follow the quality.
Guys, do you have something that you?
I just had a visual of him unboxing. Here's the tape I pulled, and then here's the X-Acto knife.
They love
You
it.
just got the unboxing. It's That's great.
All right. Well, I have one last question before we open the floor to the audience and take some questions. I wanted to talk about making an impact and how that is incorporated into the overall strategy of the content that you're creating and the stories that you're telling. On a global scale, on a national scale, on a citywide scale, how are you, making an effort, and how are you seeing efforts being made successfully, to make a real impact and break some ground with the stories you're telling in this day that we're living in?
Yeah. Okay. All right. This may sound. You just asked me the question I've been waiting for everyone to ask me.
Great.
Well, look, everything we're doing is rooted in trying to do good, because I really, really believe that the world needs civilized, and the world needs to understand cannabis and its position in the world more wholly. I'm not saying everybody needs to use. I'm saying we need to stop talking about it like it's the boogeyman, and in a society where we tolerate alcohol consumption, it is absolutely fundamentally ridiculous that we can't talk about cannabis. So we were born out of the fact that I consider myself a motivated, successful, productive cannabis consumer, and I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And I was tired of going to restaurants with my friends and my wife, and as they were having a glass of wine, we were behind the restaurant beside the dumpster with my vape pen. So this was about changing life and allowing people to have conversations that they weren't having. And look, I say this all the time. Civilized is not about cannabis. Civilized is not about cannabis. Civilized is not about cannabis. Civilized is about the pursuit of an authentic life. Full stop.
Great.
So it is everything we do is grounded in that aspiration, and which we wholly believe to be true.
Totally. Yeah, I know you wanted to.
I totally
Chime in.
forgot what it was. Okay. Run the question again?
Impact.
That.
We're talking about
Impact. So basically, one of our strategic partners is the Oakland Symphony Orchestra, and what we're doing with them, and this answers this, is they're redefining what it means to be a symphony orchestra in a community. And what's really compelling about Oakland is that the demographic of the city is what the United States is going to look like in about 20 years, in terms of gender, race, age, everything. So it's a really compelling study and partner for us. They see their mission as public health and mental health through music. And so they created a initiative called Hall Pass. And what that is doing is anyone of any economic need can call a dedicated phone number and get free tickets to the symphony orchestra. And not just once, but I think it's at least 4 times. So there's not that many concerts during the year, so they can attend almost all of them. And the price point is actually super low anyways. Like, you can get a ticket to the symphony for $25. So the Oakland Symphony decided to do a partnership with the City of Oakland and Kaiser in their initiative for public health and mental health and homelessness. So we're part of that. And for me, the impact is going to be, can I take somebody who is a senior at that, because a lot of seniors attend the concerts, but can I take someone who's feeling isolated, who's feeling lonely, who's going through some things, and bring them out of their isolation or their shell to enjoy a night at the symphony. And the impact of that is long term. It's not just a one-off. It's not just one night. But for us, again, the impact is going to be, can I give folks the ability to use something that's been one of the most powerful ancient healing techniques known to humanity, which is music, pair it with technology to make it as remote and accessible as possible, and give people the ability to holistically heal themselves in a way. So I don't want people wandering around in VR headsets. That's not my goal. That's some science fiction thing. That's not my thing. What I want people to be able to do is use Maestro, 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the morning, afternoon, evening, or whenever their anxiety levels are skyrocketing, and be able to reset and come down and then go about their day. So we're keeping our experiences short on purpose, to be able to give folks just short bursts of a really neat experience to create, again, that resilience inside. And so we talk about, you can hack the brain all you want to, but until you hack the human heart, you haven't really created that level of resilience. And so that's what our mission is.
I'm actually very proud to answer this question. So we are highly motivated as well as very interested in developing content around subjects such as prison reform, racial equality. Right now, currently, we have a project in development right now around a mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, who is a very radical mayor. And I don't want to get really political, but he's been on CNN several times for completely going against Trump. And when you mention Jackson, Mississippi, the reason why this project is so interesting is because Jackson, Mississippi is directly tied to a very rich tradition of racism. And now that city is actually almost second behind Atlanta, Georgia, in the things that it's doing for the Black community. So we, Unrealistic Ideas is very, we're somewhat trying to change the scope and developing projects around, racial equality and prison reform.
I would say that purpose has been a through line of Fast Company since it began 25 years ago. Companies with purpose, leaders with purpose. So the purpose-driven quality of leaders, companies, strategies is foremost in our mind. I read a book recently by this British business consultant, Sophie Devonshire, called Superfast. And in it, there's a chapter headlined, Purpose Equals Pace. With purpose, you have focus. With purpose, you can have your strategy gets clear. With purpose, you can tackle the unknown quicker. Your team can have unity. And that's a core principle, I think, of storytelling, of innovative, smart, future-forward companies. And I think content, which we've talked about, and storytelling can change lives, can change careers, can change points of view. And that's what we try to do at Fast Company. I think that's what each of you, I write decks in response to RFPs with my team all day, and I'm like, oh, we're not saving lives. Well, the companies we're talking to, the leaders reading our stuff, you guys are trying to change lives, and I put great weight behind that when we do the work we do to bring quality and quantity to the fore.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, so thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All of your information. I did want to open the floor up to everyone out here and see if there was any questions. Gonzalo?
So I think you've all spoken or hinted at some failures you've experienced kind of in your trajectory as storytellers, right? I was wondering if you could maybe speak to or kind of pinpoint one that helped you course correct, whether you were operating kind of in a space where you didn't have restrictions or one where you were operating within boundaries.
I'm 48 years old, and I spent, up until I was 40, I dabbled in the amateur ranks and the professional ranks of politics in Canada. A lot as a volunteer when I was younger, and then I became an operative, and at times I was, I worked for politicians, at times I ran the agency that was putting together their campaigns, and it kind of escalated for a while. Once I hit 2010, I'd done my third large scale campaign, and I was absolutely 100% sick of dealing with assholes every day of my life. And it was literally that made me change my trajectory and said, I'm tired of telling stories for these people or trying to get them to tell their stories in a way that I thought was most appropriate. And I went into the television business from there. That's it for found more assholes there. Actually, that's
a new breed of assholes.
I did the first time we did a TV show. I said that's the last time I'll do a TV show, and that's it was actually in that mood the day that Civilized was created, January 23rd, 2015.
So my dad was the proctologist to the stars.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just had to throw that out there. and basically, not all assholes are the same.
Right.
I'll say when I first moved to Los Angeles looking for fame or fortune, I think one of the things that really sticks out to me is so many people told me so many different, you can't do this, you can't do that, you have to do this, you have to do that. And actually, for some time, I actually listened to all those rules, and it got me absolutely nowhere.
Yep.
I would say trust your own instincts, trust your gut, and fuck everything else everyone else says. Do what you really feel, because people will tell you, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, oh, you can't walk on this, you can't knock on that door, you can't do that. You disregard all that and just really go for whatever it is that you want to do.
I reinvent myself with alarming regularity. I went from being a photojournalist to being a baby diplomat to entrepreneur. I had a definite failure on my first company. It was a great idea, but everything was done wrong, essentially. And what I learned, you learn more about yourself in failure than you do in success. And it's interesting that this company, Maestro, is resilience technology, because the thing that I learned about myself, probably more than anything else, is the level of resilience that I have. And that doesn't mean that I wasn't sleeping in the fetal position. And it doesn't mean that, I was not having those wicked dark nights of the soul and all of that stuff. It doesn't mean any of that. What it means, though, is that I stood back up. And, that's really the mark of it. And for female entrepreneur, that is my ride's here. I gotta go.
Yeah.
For a female entrepreneur that is older, and that people you're invisible a lot of the time. And so the thing that I always have to do, and I learned it, there was a great panel I saw earlier today where the woman was talking about shutting down the voices in her head that are telling her, you're not this, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's not listening so much to other people, it's listening, although that's wicked, it's listening to yourself and your own negative pattern that is the most devastating of all. And you can't walk around like someone with Tourette's telling yourself, but you want to, and that's, I think, the hardest part of this whole thing. I get lost and I get small, if you will, when I start thinking of the money that I have to raise, and when I start thinking about like the road ahead of what I have to do. I come back to life, if you will, and I stand tall and grow back into myself, if you will, when I remember why I'm doing it. And so for me, it's an incredible privilege to work with the veterans that I'm working with and to work with the folks that I'm talking to on a daily basis. And that's what's keeping me going. It's not, and obviously I have to make it a successful company, which means I have to raise the funds and all that other stuff, but at the same time, the thing that gets me calm enough to fall asleep, need you, is the remembering the purpose of it.
Right.
That's the only way to hold on to this, at least for me.
All right.
And I always say that, maybe in LA that only happens, people give you so many rules when you first move to LA.
Try New York, just kidding.
Oh, New York, but yeah. So, in LA, that's notorious. People will tell you, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, oh, you can't knock on that person's door, you can't, you have to do this, but you have to literally just completely disregard all the bad advice and go for what you believe.
Fuck them all.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have time for one more quick question, or do we have to wrap it up?
Oh yeah, this will be really short. Quickly, I just want to know, because all of you have to say no, like, a lot in your jobs, right? No, you can't get on my Unfast company. No, I'm not going to make a documentary. No, I won't work with you. How do you say no? Like, what's your go-to?
I just say no.
Just straight up. Straight.
Obviously there's several different ways that we turn down projects.
Yeah.
We get pitched a huge amount of projects from everyone seems to have a television pitch in LA, and probably I'm sure across the country. And we get pitches daily, and 99% of those pitches are really, really bad. Some of those pitches come from celebrities or Mark's friends that we have to somewhat pay attention to.
Finesse.
Yeah.
Right. So there's ways that we tell people no. But I think, me pitching projects for myself, I think if you don't get an initial reaction the moment you pitch that project, it's a no. Yeah.
Damian? Do you have
In my world, we rarely say no. We're a legacy media. We gotta find a way to get to yes and make sure it's profitable for us. So I just go seek others, and we find a collective yes or a unified no. And I just like to this gentleman's question. I just want to say, if there was a lesson I've learned over all my own personal things, it's listen more. Listen to your critics and I respect that point of view, Prince's point of view completely, but listening to your critics, to your collaborators, to your clients, to the others, and you'll have a better thing in the end. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys